Okay. Welcome back, guys. Again, yesterday we have seen about the get mapping, where we can send a get call and then get fetch the employee details from the repository. But basically, we are not fetching it from the repository, where we are hard coding it here. That's stuff that we'll avoid, and we'll try to fetch it from the repository. And we also have get method where we can fetch an employee detail by passing the id as a path parameter. But for now, again, we are hard coding it. It's not coming from the database directly. We will try to avoid that. And and most importantly, you cannot have logic here. So so it has to be like this. And then employee service dot get employee. Maybe I'll create a method, get employee, because this should basically do just the calling. Okay, all the business logic should be there. So maybe for now we will just assume I'm returning null for now, because I don't have an employee with me. For now, we just assume, or I can also use some get employees dot get of maybe if they pass me an ID, I'll basically pass that ID -1. Okay, for now. Okay, and let's go back to the caller, and then we'll pass the ID whatever we are getting from the path parameter, right? So this is how we have done. But this is not using any repository, and we'll try to use an in-memory repository called as H2, and then we'll try to use with it. Okay, so now Spring Boot again have a brilliant options like let me create an interface here. This is a data access object layer, so which helps you to access data from the database. Okay, you have one more layer where you can write your own logic. Okay, so employee repository, let me name it as employee repository, which gonna help me fetch the values from this. Okay, let me create it. So Spring Boot has certain interfaces where they have defined a lot of default methods where which we can use it for our direct use. So I'm just extending a repository called as JPA repository. Okay, so this JPA repository has most of the methods. Okay, so if you notice, it is a generic asking for T and the ID. What is this T? T means it's asking for a generic. Okay, so T means which class you want to use it as an entity. Okay, we are going to play only with employee class. Yeah, this is the class that we are going to play with. So we have to give that here. Okay, so employee, and then what is the primary key for that employee class? Okay, in the employee class we have ID, so we will keep it as a primary key, right? So we'll keep like this. Okay, so what is the data type of that particular key? It's basically an integer, so we'll give this integer. Okay, so int is basically a primitive type. We cannot use that in generic, so I'm using the box type integer. And on top of it, we have to just tell repository, just basically to denote to everyone that this is a repository. And if this is a repository, this repository is going to work with the employee table. So here, this is basically an entity. Okay, okay, this entity thing will make this as a table. Okay, this makes us a table in this database. Okay, so this is a table where you have primary key as this. And because we have already mentioned, okay, this is the primary key. Employee is the class. In that integer value, that is employee ID is my primary key. And what I'm going to do, I'm basically going to have these three columns in that table. So it's as simple as that. Okay, now we have this. Now let's go and see this. Instead of hard coding like this, okay, I have an option where I can basically, okay, maybe I'll just comment it out for now. And then if you just type new employee repository, okay, dot, notice it is basically having all these things. Okay, delete all, delete by id, find by id, all those things it will have. Find all by id, find by id. So these methods I didn't created. Okay, so it is basically accepting an integer, and then it's returning you optional of employee. So basically this is doing a lot of things that I didn't develop all these things, but it's doing all these things. Okay, so that's the beauty about using Spring Boot. Okay, so again, I don't want to create this myself. Okay, let the Springboot do the dependency injection for me. So let's do it like private employee repository. Again, there are different injections you can do. You can do setter level injection, constructor injection, or a variable injection. I'm doing the variable injection or your field injection. You can try other types as well, but for now, yeah, we are not focusing on that much. So employee repository, I have like this, and on top of it, I need to tell auto wired, and I go to that particular thing, and I can tell like components. Okay, this becomes a component now, and I go here, and I still see some issues. Okay, because this is having a return type, I need to return it. That's okay. But for now, what I'm going to do, return um, basically employee repository dot get. So basically you can get by id, okay, or there is method called find. So if you notice, find all will basically find all the ones, okay, and then you can also have find all, and then you can pass sort type so that you can sort and send it. You can also tell pageable stuff, okay, all these things, all these options are available, but for now I am interested in find all, okay, which basically finds all the employees in the repository. But imagine we don't have anything in the repository. Either you need to add some basic data to it. So what I can do, I can basically add some dummy data before making a call to this. Okay, so I am doing a hard coding here. You can also use command line arguments, or you can have that table created and data injected how we normally do. But for now time being, I'm just directly adding it. Okay, to adding a employee, you can just still save. Okay, see, save is basically asking for yes, which means you pass me an employee, I will save to the database. Okay, but if you also have list of employees, then you can also pass the iterable there. Okay, so what I can do, I can, instead of returning it, okay, I have a list like this. Okay, let me introduce employees here, and then save all, and I'll pass the employees. So I'm saving some dummy data before I make this call. Okay, so that it returns this, okay, to me. This is just a dummy. Okay, so yeah. And here again, if someone wants to find an employee using the id, instead of this, what you can basically do is employee repository dot find by id. Okay, so this directly is having all the methods. Okay, just pass the id to it, it will find you. Okay, so this basically returns you optional, but if you want, you can also use get by id. Okay, this basically returns you this. Okay, what is the difference between find by id and get by id? Okay, there are two things. Okay, let's see the return type of both of them. Okay, employee repository dot find by id, and let me introduce a variable, and employee repository dot get by id and id. Okay, okay, so see, if you notice, this find by id will be really helpful if we don't want it to throw an error. So optional is a class in java from 1.8, which will help you to do the which help you to avoid the null pointer exception, because normally if that's not there, this will basically be null. Okay, next time you point that, it'll throw you null pointer exception. But in the case of this, it won't throw you null pointer exception. If you want to use it, you have to use like this: if by id dot is present. If it is present, okay, no problem. Okay, I'll get it for me. If it is not present, okay, then throw. Okay, you can throw a new illegal state exception, something like this, and you can basically throw some like id, um, if it is not id not present. Okay, id not present. Okay, something like this, because we cannot return an employee whose id is not present in our database. Okay, we cannot return it. Basically, I can throw an error like this. Okay, and then what else we have? We don't have to do it. Okay, or maybe you can remove it. Okay, so if it is there, okay, if it is the id is not there, then throw this. Otherwise, find the element and then return it. Okay, now let's go to the controller, and then we'll control. Okay, everything looks fine. Everything looks fine. Let's try to check this whole stuff. Okay, let's try to run it. So I have let's hit this. Okay, I have some error. Let's see what is that. um no identifier find specified for entity. Mhm. We have added the identifier, right? Okay, let's go to the employee class. We have added the entity. This should act like an entity. What is the problem? Mhm. Let's go to the repository as well. We are telling employee.class, that is basically coming from correct only. Mm, it should work. Let's try to run it again. Basically, it is still throwing error. Let's post the recording. Yeah, so the problem is, we haven't added the or defined, no identifier. What is the identifier? What is the primary key for your database? So basically now we have to go here and then tell @id, which is coming here from your persistence per catch. And if you go here, we are mentioning it integer. So the primary keys of type integer can be of long type or double type as well, but people mostly prefer integer or long. And for integer, I told it this is an integer, but what field among them? There can be other field with the integer type as well. So I need to clearly mention which one is this. Okay, let's try to run it now and then check whether it is what's happening. Okay, now this has been started. So all good. Good. Now let's go here and then try to get all the employee details. So basically this is fetching me all these details because I have added them, right? I have, whenever you are making a get employees call, okay, I hard, adding this hard coded way, right? So this one amudan testing millibytes, one such and such and such. So this is being added in a hard coded way. Now we can, what I can do, I can also make an call to fetch the id one. So now this is also fetching me the id one. So this how the get call is being built in the backside, right? Backend. So just imagine, right? And we have now worked with get calls. We can also work with post calls, put and delete calls. And then yeah, let's go to the controller. Let's implement post call, which is little interesting. So post mapping. And what is the path of this path? Maybe just slash employees, no problem with that. Okay, this time we need to pass the body from the, what are the body they're passing, sorry guys, like employee. And here add employee. Okay, now return. And let me create a employee service dot add employee stuff there in the service class. Maybe I'll also this time, previously we got the id from the path variable, but this time we also get a request body. So there will be at the rate request body. From the request body I will get an employee type. Okay, employee type. What are the employee that is coming, I'm just passing to this guy, and I'm creating the method there. And I have to write the logic of saving the employee. So a simple way is basically to call employee repository dot save. And whatever the thing that is coming, I'm just saving it. Okay, this is the simplest way, right? And I want to return the employee, whatever I saved, I just returning the same thing. Okay, just for the user to know that basically we added this, right? That's what the JSON server also will return. Whatever the request you send, it will respond you back with the same response, right? This is just a dummy API, so we are returning like this. Or you can return a success message, or whatever the response you want to construct, you can construct and return. But this is the simplest way, right? Okay, but imagine the id is already present. Okay, and you don't want, you have a business rule now, you don't want to add an employee. Suppose the user is passing again an id of one. Okay, you don't want to save it to the database, right? In this case you want to throw an error. So how to do that? So let's say employee repository dot you can do exist by id. So exist by id basically returns you boolean. Okay, I'm just checking employee dot. Okay, I'm trying to find in the repository whether there is an ID, employee with an ID this exists. Okay. I'm just surrounding this with if condition. If that already exists, okay, if that already exists, I should throw new. Uh, will state exception that the ID already exists. Uh, Something like this, right? If it is not the case, then I want to save that employee and then return that employee. Very simple stuff. Good, right? Everything looks good. Any doubts in this so far? In the post mapping or the get mapping that we used? Guys, yes or no? Any doubts? Okay, no problem. So let's stop the server and then start it again. We'll also test the post mapping now. It's very simple things. Okay, if someone is passing me a body, how in the backend developers are saving it? Okay, what is the endpoint? How they are mapping the endpoint that we are telling? How all these informations are being used at the backend? Whatever the information that we pass, that's my ultimate goal. Okay. Developing an REST API using Springboot is really easy. I learned Springboot in one day. Okay, that's how easy it is, because I don't know anything about Springboot before, but I learned everything in one day. Okay, good. So now this employee repository is extending JPA repository. This has a lot of methods in it, which is what we are actually using in our the service class, where we are find by ID. These are all things that already exist in that. We are just making use of it. Okay, first let me make a get call so that it will push all the data into the database. And now what do we want to do? I want to basically duplicate this tab, and I'll make it as a post call to this endpoint, but the body using JSON, and maybe I'll copy the body snippet from here. And suppose let's say I want to hit this again. Okay, it is telling ID already exists. This is the error that we sent, right? It's actually returning that. Suppose I change the ID to 3. Okay, let's send it. Now this is getting stored. Okay, now if you make a get employees call, you have three employees, right? So this is how easy it is to implement all the new changes. Okay, let's also do mhm. So it's basically throwing that error. So ID already exists error. That's what we also got here. That's okay. Now let's also implement other stuff. Let's go to the controller. We also want the delete. Okay, let's do the delete now. So for the delete, you need to tell delete mapping and the employee slash ID. Okay, you don't need this. And then basically you can copy this. Okay, with this time I won't return an employee. Maybe I'll return a string and delete employee ID. Okay, I'll create a method. So first I will check if this is already there. You can also do the check using this. Okay, let's copy this. If it is already existing by ID, okay. If it's not existing, then I want to throw ID not present, because if it's only present only, I can delete it, right? ID not present. Then here I can just, if that is not satisfied, then I have the ID there. So I'll delete that particular ID, delete by ID and the ID, right? That's it. Once it's done, I want to do return basically some string. Okay, something like this. Okay, now this is also implemented. Let's also implement a put mapping, right? Put mapping is little tricky. Let's do it. So put mapping, I have a put mapping with the endpoint of this. You have to imagine how we worked with put mapping in our JSON server. Okay, just basically replicating the JSON server, right? Edit employee. So I'll create edit employee, and this edit employee will also have multiple things. Okay, uh, put they will also pass the request body, employee, and also we have the path variable. Okay, and for this I am passing both these components ID. Okay, let's try to create the method. And here, let's say I have an ID, and I want to edit this ID employee with a new employee they are sending, object they are sending. Okay, first I'm checking if this already present. Okay, if this already present, it's not present, then I say ID not present, I cannot update that employee. If that's not the case, then I'll try to get that employee, edit it, and then delete it. Okay, so let's do it. Or what I can basically do, if that's not the case, I'll create a new employee. um, uh, okay, and then first, I'm checking whether the ID, if it is not present, I'm just telling not present. If it is present, first let me delete that particular employee. um, for deleting, I can use employee repository dot delete by ID. I'm just deleting it and then adding the new employee. I'll add the new employee now. So to construct the new employee, I have the new employee with me, so I can basically okay, I can basically update it. So employee repository dot save, and whatever the employee that is coming, I'm just saving it. Okay, this is the simplest operation, but let's say for updating, you should not update the ID field. There may be certain business logics. If you want to encapsulate all of them, that's okay, but for now I'm not doing all this. So whatever the employee that's coming, I'm just returning it. Okay, so a very simple thing. So let me so edit employee, let's go here, and then let's replace this with employee. Okay, that's all, guys. That's all. We have developed almost everything. Okay, let's stop this and then run it again so that the new changes takes place. Okay, now let's go here and let's try to make the get call to the employee so that some data pre-filled with it. Okay, now I can also make a post call. Okay, I can make a post call, and then maybe the second time if I make a post call, what happens? Okay, maybe the same ID. Okay, it throws error. Very good. If I make a poll 5 4, good. And let's also verify, duplicate the tab. Let's also verify a delete call. I want to delete the first employee. Okay, so it's success. Let's go here, validate. Yeah, basically, okay, this is not a real-time database, right? So whenever I'm deleting it, when I call the get employees, the default one will get added. So maybe I'll try with the third and fourth. So that's basically stored to the repository. Let's delete it. Now if I go here and add it, so now the third is getting deleted, because whenever I'm calling the employees, I'm adding the first two. Okay, so let's go there, and basically if you see employee service, whenever we are making the get employees call, I'm basically adding these two. So it will get added even if you remove it and again making a get call, it will get added. Okay, so that's why I try to delete the third one, which is basically added to the in-memory database h2. So when you delete 3, it won't be reflected there. Okay, and let's also try the put mapping. For that, I'll just duplicate the tab and make it as a put. I have a body now, but I need to tell which one I want to update. Maybe I'll use the third one or the fourth one, because third one is deleted. I trying to update the fourth one with the let's say 1, 1, 2, 3, something like this. Maybe the ID is 5, whatever. Okay, sometimes I don't want to update the ID, I just want to update the other fields. Okay, and then I set a put, right? This is working. Suppose if I try to update an ID that doesn't exist, okay, then it basically tells ID not present, right? So we have almost developed everything, right? So this is what it's all about. So we have developed the get employees, um, okay, get employee by ID, all those stuff, and then we also have done posting or adding a new employee, updating a new employee, and deleting an employee. So we have done almost every CRUD operation. So this is how, whatever the values you are passing, the request body will be interpreted like this, and then the path parameters will be interpreted and then passed like this, and then they fetch the value from a database and give it back to you. So this is how people are developing REST APIs using Spring Boot. Okay, there are more towards this. Okay, I haven't spoken detail on different types of injections, what is bean life cycle, what is a bean, and other stuff. But yeah, my intention is again just show you how things work at the backend. Maybe we can also try with the query parameter, because we have covered part parameter. The query parameter we didn't try. We will also try that. Get employees, that is matching employees, matching query, something like this. So if in the path parameter they will tell what is the ID. Apart from that, maybe I'll keep like this. Okay, get employees matching the query. So let them pass some query parameter to me. What I will do, I'll basically tell at the rate request, I think it's request param. Okay, request param, and request param, let's name it as a string, and then limit. Okay, okay, and yeah, so if we passing a request parameter of limit, then what I'm going to do, I'm basically finding all the employees. Basically I need to call get employees. Okay, and can create get employees matching query, something like this. Okay, let's also do a create a new method. I'll pass the ID limit. Okay, everything. Okay, basically this stores an integer value. The key is limit, but the value will be int. So I'll try to create a method here, and here what I do, I basically find all employees, repository dot find all, trying to find the all, and maybe I will create a stream, and then I will limit. Okay, I limit to the limit. Okay, that's it. And then I will collect all of them as collectors dot to list. Okay, and then home return, and this is going to basically return me a list of employees that is matching this particular query. Here in my case, I'm just limiting them. Suppose if I say limit 2, then it should only return 2. So I'm basically creating a stream connection, limiting the number of values, and basically collecting again back to list and then sending them back. Okay, good. And let's go to the controller, and here it's no more employee. It's going to return a list of employee. Okay, I think mandatory, optional thing, that is a mandatory yeah, string value. Yeah, so the required one, so there is a parameter called required. Okay, required equal to false. Okay, what does it mean? So if you don't mention this, this will become a mandatory parameter, but most of the time the query parameter should be non-mandatory. That's why we are giving this. Let's assume I'm not giving this for now. Okay, let's assume I control Z. Okay, I remove this for now. Let's try to go and then do, yeah, let's stop it and then run it. This is just for your understanding, guys, how things work at the back end. Okay, okay, there is something here, and basically it's drilling. So get employees is map. There is already employee controller bean method. So the slash employees is already remapped. So you pass me something else. Okay, or you have an ID. Why you need the ID? So this one is not needed. Should work. Okay. Okay, I'm doing some mistake here. It's basically telling there is already employee controller bean method with the get employees. The name is basically causing the issues or the endpoint. Endpoint shouldn't be the problem. Here we have the request parameter. But from that, Get employees defined in. So let's see, defined in class path resource, get employees. What a mistake I'm doing. Resume the recording. We'll have an endpoint like this, and then we'll try what's happening. Okay, it should work, but yeah. Yeah, now we can uniquely identify. So the endpoint and the get call. So this is also get mapping. This is also get mapping. This is also path variable of this. This is also path variable of this. Then how can I find it uniquely? So that's what it throwed. So for now we are using employees one to basically pass your query parameters and other stuff. Let's first make a employees call so that you get the default data. You can also post some new data to it. Okay, and now our goal is to basically make a get call. We'll oh, no. Let me duplicate this. I'll make a get call to employees one database with okay, if I just send this, okay, bad request, because I need to pass a request parameter, that is query parameter. Okay, this is a mandatory field now. Okay, so let's go here and then pass the query parameters limit, and then basically two, I want to restrict by two number of values. Okay, now we are getting two values, right? If you tell three, okay, we are getting three values, right? So basically you can use the query parameter like this. Okay, if there are multiple query parameters, you need to pass multiple arguments to this. Okay, that's it. So now it is now a mandatory field. Okay, you don't want that to be a mandatory field, then you can use uh, required stuff equal to false, which means it is not anymore a mandatory field. Okay, everything else works the same way. Okay, good guys, I think I have covered almost everything what I want to cover. If you have any doubts, you can ask me now, otherwise we are all good. Any doubts?
No.
Okay, I haven't there are a lot more. Okay, you can create. So apart from whatever you have, suppose we have only get find by id. Okay, we have find by id. Okay, suppose I want to find by email. Okay, find by an email. Okay, so let's say I'll check whether there is a job option. Okay, employee repository dot find by email. There is no, because that's the primary key, right? You don't have that. Okay, by default. Okay, in that case you can create your stuff directly. You can go here, you can create this find by. Okay, you can basically create here, and then those will be used. Okay, yeah. So this, they will add additional methods if they want to add it here, but for now I'm not doing it. I'm just giving you enough understanding what is Spring Boot is all about, where you can leverage dependency injection, lot of already created annotations for your use cases to build the REST APIs. That's it. Okay, good. Any more doubts before we wrap?
No.
I know this may be little confusing for you. That's okay, guys, because just assume, um, just understand. If you just understand what things happening at the background, how they are using the path parameter you are passing, how they are able to fetch the value using it, why this is mandatory field, why query parameter is not mandatory field. These kind of things we are memorizing, right? Before I take this class, you would be memorizing. Okay, query parameter is optional. Why this Amur is telling optional? Because we don't know. Because developers are configuring in such a way, there is an option. Sometimes it can be also mandatory. So if in interview they're asking, is query parameter mandatory or optional? Okay. So at the time, previously you would have answered it is optional, because that's how most developers do. You suppose if they are asking, can it be made mandatory? Okay. In those cases, you would be will be told, I don't know, because actually we don't know, right? So now you know exactly what is happening at the background. You can tell there is a required parameter in request param. If I set that to false, it is a configurable option. I can make it a mandatory field, but a not mandatory field as well. But most people prefer that to be a non-mandatory field. Okay, so that's your answer should be. Okay, now they know you know more stuff. If they ask how you know, but I know Spring Boot, REST API development using Spring Boot. I can develop a CRUD API within 10 minutes. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so this is how you impress interviewers, right? You know, basically you need to have knowledge to impress interviewers, right? You cannot memorize things. Okay, so the more you know, the better, right? Good. That's all for me from my side as well. Thank you for choosing this course. I know I haven't informed you this is the last day, but yeah, today is your last day with the course. I'm not going to be boring you anymore. So you all have very good fun. Thanks for choosing me again. So see you all again in good course. Maybe let's meet again. Sure. Let's stop the recording.